It's time for another episode of the Nerdy Knitting Podcast, so why don't you grab your knitting and a drink and let's settle in for a good chat. Hey Nerdy Knitter, it's the end of another month and time for another monthly roundup where I talk about the projects that are off my needles and on my needles and upcoming, and got a big pile over here today. But I do have a few announcements first. I've got 3 pattern releases to talk about. Lots going on right here, right now, I guess. And also I'm teaching at the upcoming conference in April, the Next Level Knitting Conference hosted by the Knitting Guild Association. So I'm going to put a link to that down below because registration is open if you want to attend. And I've talked about it a lot in the past, so I don't want to say too much about it now because you can read everything over there. But it's a lot of classes. I mean, the tickets aren't cheap, but you get 6 months access to all of the classes. So even the ones you can't attend, there's like 3 or 4 going on at the same time over the course of the conference from Friday to Sunday. So a lot of classes, but you have 6 months access so you can watch all of them at your leisure. I'll be teaching 2 classes for the conference, one on the art of lace knitting. We're just going to talk about all of the increases and decreases, nose stitch, how to read a chart, and everything there is to know about knitting lace. So if that's a new skill for you, then that might be a class you want to attend. I'm also teaching a class called Fix Your Knits. We're going to look at basic stitch patterns and how we can fix those different stitch patterns if you make a mistake. So stockinette, reverse stockinette, garter stitch, knit 2, purl 2, rib, and seed stitch. Once you've sort of tackled those, you can apply the methods that you're learning to other stitch patterns as well. And of course, we're going to talk about stitch mount, Eastern versus Western, twisting your stitches, how to read your stitches, because you can't really fix your mistakes if you can't read your knitting and see what's going on. So we're going to cover all of that in the other class as well. And there's so many classes I'm looking forward to attending. So I'll be in there watching videos and attending classes along with you as well when I'm not teaching those 2 classes. Okay, so on to pattern releases. The first one is the Longshore Currents Cowl. Now this is, get my hair off there. This uses 2 yarns from Knit Picks, the Chroma fingering in Cousteau for that beautiful gradient blue, and then the bear skein as well for the white in there. So it's knit in the round, and both sides, you can see, look really nice. So it's a double-sided cowl. It's very nice and plush and warm. So you are knitting in the round. You can see the seam right here. So you start at one end and you knit it as long as you want it and you bind off, and then you sew those 2 ends together. So all of the stranded, the wrong side of the knitting is trapped inside so you can't see it, and you get this lovely double thick fabric. So that pattern is out now. I'll have a link down below. And the next one is a sock tutorial. For our last pair of socks, I actually have another tutorial for socks coming up, working out the pattern right now. So this one is also knit from toe to cuff. It's the last in our toe to cuff series. Well, I've got another one coming, so more on that in the future. But this one uses a rounded toe. You start down here at the toe and you knit that, and then you change colors if you want. You could do it all in one single color. And then we're using an afterthought heel, or peasant heel. We're sort of placing our waste yarn, and I like to use lifelines as well because I don't like picking up like stitches for, I don't mind if they're bigger stitches, but for tiny little sock stitches, not a fan. So I like to use a lifeline, place my waste yarn, and then put another lifeline in. Then I can just go up and pick my stitches up much more easily. And then when the sock is complete, just a little rolled hem cuff right there. We go back and we pick up stitches and we do a round heel. It's basically the reverse of this. This one we're using increases to get the shape, and then for this heel we're decreasing to get the shape, but it's technically the same exact toe and heel, just worked a little bit differently. So that comes with a full video tutorial and a pattern. This one's done on shorty needles, so I only did 4 sizes because you can't go super small with shorty needles. I mean, they're like 9, maybe they're smaller than 9 inches. I don't know, or they're smaller than 9-inch circulars. So your sock circumference can't be much smaller than that because you need enough stitches to fit around that circular needle. And of course, you're going to need something with a cable to do the cast on. So like magic loop or 2 circulars. And then after that, you could use double pointed needles for the rest of the toe until you have enough stitches to get to the foot. And then the same for the heel. You're going to need some other method for knitting the heel because a short circular won't work when you have fewer stitches than will fit around on that circular needle. Now the last pattern release is for the Knitting Guild Association, the latest issue of Cast On magazine. This is the fruit salad shawl. Don't know if I can show it all at once, but it's a kite shawl. Starts over here at this tip, and then just garter stitch and lace and eyelets and stripes and this little textured stitch in here, and then you just keep going, repeating all of those until you bind off this edge here. So this uses Sweet Georgia yarn Tough Love sock in one of her Party of 5 colorways, the fruit salad colorway, and then a skein of Bear yarn from her as well, Bear Tough Love sock, as sort of the background stitch pattern. So that one is out. It's available. I wrote an article on the different ways to knit triangle shawls, starting with just a few stitches. There's a lot of ways to knit triangle shawls, and I wanted to narrow it down a little bit. So if you're just casting on a few, you can do like a top down, bottom up, side to side, lots of different ways. And also a kite shawl, which is technically a triangle when it's done. So I decided to go with a design for a kite shawl to go along with the article, because they're popular, but there's a lot more like top-down triangles or asymmetrical triangles. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I decided a kite shawl would be lots of fun. And it was lots of fun to knit, but trying to write the pattern, because of all the shaping to get a kite shawl shape, you have to write it out row by row and be pretty exact with that, because there's a lot of stitch patterns going on too. If I'd chosen something like an asymmetrical triangle shawl, then I think it probably would have been easier to just say repeat this section, repeat this section. But with a kite shawl, you can't really do that. You're writing it out row by row. So I'm really pleased with the way it came out. It's a really nice colorful shawl, and it's been just sort of hanging out here, but I think it's time to take it out and put it with my winter coat so I can have a bit of color, especially when it's dreary and cold like it is right now. So you'll find links for all of those new releases down below. And of course, before we get to the pile of knitting that's over here, we have to be a bit nerdy and talk about a knitting book. And I'm working on a new cabled project right now. So I pulled this book out. This is the Knitted Cable Sourcebook by Norah. This is one of my favorite books on cables, and it's a stitch dictionary, but it goes much further than like your normal 2/2 rope cable or 3/3 braid cable, and really dives into her thought process for taking a motif and then using that one cable motif and creating multiple different variations based on this one motif, by doing the whole thing all over, by removing some stitches and just doing it in sections. Just so many thought processes that she's put in here. So it's like part stitch dictionary, but also part a look at Norah Gaughan's brain when she's thinking about making new cable motifs. So it's a really good resource. There are some patterns in here sprinkled throughout as well. And like many of her patterns, they are, I don't want to say, how do you say, they're not like just, you know, plain classic sweaters. She always adds something to, I don't know, make it elevate it a little bit or change it up, or sometimes it's just not everybody's style. And this one, I think it's going to blow out a little, but it looks like a plain cable sweater, but we've got this dip on the sides. Like it's, I can tell looking at it, like the construction's a little bit different. I'll try to find the pattern and pop it up here so you can see. But her patterns are often like that, like they are. I've got a few of her other books and they're even more avant-garde, is that the word? Like they're a step beyond like just a basic cabled sweater, you know, like a saddle shoulder cable. We've all seen those kind of sweaters. Let me see if I can find some. Oh, and this hat, I really like the way this hat is constructed, but it's got like this cable that is knit lengthwise first, and then you're picking up stitches for the brim and the top, and it's just the way it's constructed is completely different than a normal hat. So there are patterns in here as well, but I mean, it's really a stitch dictionary. So you'll have like pictures of a cable, and then we'll have some notes about it, and then a chart and written instructions as well. And then it will tell you like the multiple and the stitch count and all of that. And a lot of them are more, what I would say are more advanced cables, moving beyond like a 2/2 knit or a 3/3 knit. She'll include yarn overs and increases and decreases and knits over purls and cables moving in every direction. Like here's an example of one that's a little more intricate. It's not, oh, there, that's better. So there's a lot of them like that. Like there are basic ones in here as well, but a lot of much more intricate cables and some patterns as well. But it really is a stitch dictionary. But I like, there's another chapter at the end where she talks about, it's called Finding Motifs, and she talks about how she takes one motif and then makes changes to it. And this is actually the one I used for the design, one of these motifs here in this collection. It's not going to show. I'll get an overhead picture of this one so you can see. But it's one motif, but then how she adjusts it and changes it to get a lot of different stitch patterns as well. So Norah Gaughan's Knitted Cable Sourcebook is a really good resource if you like to pop in cables in your own projects, or if you design your own stuff then and you like cables. This is a really good exploration into designing cables as well, and using one motif and making a lot of different changes, and using her patterns in here as inspiration too. There's some that I just like to read them and see how she's constructed things. I might not actually knit them, but I like to see her thought process for constructing garments. Now it's time for the knitting, and first is off the needles, and I actually have some things off the needles for once. First is this sweater. Pop in a little video of me wearing it that I recorded just before I sat down to record this. So this is Flax by Tin Can Knits, but you can tell that I went crazy with modifications. The neckline is different. I added bust darts, I added waist shaping, I changed the sleeve length, I changed the edging. Instead of whatever rib pattern there was, I did a lace rib instead. Just so many changes, and I'm very pleased with the fit and how it came out. I wanted something that had shorter sleeves, sort of a transition between seasons kind of sweater, where it's still, I mean, it's still cold here, but you know, coming up in the next few months we have that in-between weather where it's still chilly, but you know, I just want to I want to put the heavy sweaters away and sort of lighten things up a little bit. So I knit this as part of a workshop we've just wrapped up. We have one more Zoom session next week, but otherwise the first workshop session is wrapped up, and I taught people how to take a top-down raglan sweater and make all those modifications. So I had to demonstrate that, so I went crazy and made lots of modifications. And I'm going to be doing the next run of that workshop again. It takes about 2 months. We take our time and go through each part of the sweater. You pick out a pattern. This time it's going to be top-down yoke or top-down raglan. You can have your choice. You choose the pattern you want to knit, and I show you how to modify it to fit you really well. This one I actually did 2 different sizes as well. I chose one size for the body and then another size for the sleeves, and I walk you through how that works as well, because sometimes these top-down sweaters, especially if you have a larger bust, or your arms are really slim, or your arms are larger like mine, then sometimes the sizing is weird, and sometimes you don't want to choose a size based on your full bust. I didn't. I chose one based on my upper bust instead, and then made some modifications to fit my full bust. And we just go over all of those things, how to make it fit, because we all have different body shapes, and knitting patterns are written for like a standard average body shape. And if you're outside that average, it can be a little more difficult to get a sweater that fits you well. So the whole point of the course is to show you how to get a sweater that fits well, no matter your body shape. So that's coming up. If you want to join the next run of the workshop, I'll have a link down below, so you can you'll be the first to be notified when that's open, which it's going to be open very soon. And we're going to start knitting another sweater, and I'm going to be knitting another Tin Can Knits pattern. I'm going to show you that in a little bit, but I was really pleased with this first one. This first modified sweater. I've modified lots of sweaters, but I was pleased with the way the course went and the feedback I got from everybody. We had a really good time in our Zoom sessions, and looking forward to doing that all over again with another batch of students. Oh, and the yarn that I used is Wool of the Andes Superwash. I can't remember the color, but it's a Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight superwash yarn. Now, the next thing off my needles is technically not completely done. I have woven in the ends and washed and blocked it, but right now it's just a square. This is going to be a cowl. I'm writing an article for the Knitting Guild Association on afterthought buttonholes. So I've knit the whole piece. That's going to be a cowl. I've got my microphone on, so I don't want to wrap this around my neck, but it's going to have some buttons and buttonholes here within the cables on the ends. So it'll button like that, and you can wear it around your neck. So it's just a basic knit 2 purl 2 rib, but I pulled one of those cable patterns from Norah Gaughan's Knitted Cable Sourcebook and popped it in here. all along this. Just simple knit 2, purl 2, rib with those cables. So I'm going to put the buttons and the buttonholes like right in the middle of a cable, like right about there or so. So then it'll button and overlap and you'll have the cable right there. So the knitting part is finished. Now I just have to do the buttonholes and the buttons and get the article written. So, and I'm also doing a book review for them, but we'll talk about that book next month. I'm still reading it. It's a big, thick history book. So we'll talk about that then. But I'm really pleased with how this came out. And the yarn is just lovely. This is Louise Robert, her Merino worsted. So it's really lovely and just a beautiful color. What is this color? Chardon is the color name. So this is a Superwash worsted weight merino yarn. Lots of lovely hand-dyed colors, and I didn't do anything to like alternate between skeins. I just would used one and then just started with the other, and I don't see any like demarcation line or anything anywhere like that. Just that lovely hand-dyed color. So really lovely yarn. I still have a skein left, so not sure what I'm going to do with that. Something, I think, because I only ended up needing 2 skeins to finish the cowl. But so technically it's off my needles. It's not completely finished because I still have to do the buttons and the buttonholes, but pretty much done. The knitting part is done at least, and the rest will just be a little bit of finishing I have to do. Now I have one more unfinished project that was sort of unexpected. I wasn't expecting to knit one of these, but I did. Over Christmas break, I bought myself a hot water bottle. Never had one before. And man, I love that thing on a chilly night, popping that into my bed and warming up my toes. But I'm not a fan of like the plasticky feel of it. So I knit a cozy. And you can see it's the same color. I have leftover yarn from my sweater. So I used some of it to knit myself a little cozy for my hot water bottle. I told my husband I am turning into an old lady when I start knitting cozies for hot water bottles. But I still have to wash it. It's a bit puckered up. But it came out really cute. So this is a Church Mouse Yarn and Tees pattern for a I think it's just hot water bottle cozy. And they have it's a plain pattern. There is no color work on it, but they also have like a few color work patterns that you can pop into it. And I figured I would pop one in there just to have a little bit of interest. So the yarn is left over from my sweater. So Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Superwash worsted. And then the white yarn is Cascade 220 Superwash and just white. I can't remember what this color is called, the purple. But very fun, simple knit. You start by knitting this little bit of ribbing down here. You do that flat. And then you cast on a bunch of stitches and you start knitting the body and the round, and then introduce your stitch pattern if you're doing that. And then it's like just some decreasing here along the sides and a little turtleneck for the hot water bottle neck. And then afterwards just weave in the ends, and then the ribbing part is sort of makes an envelope. You sew it up to both sides. More hair on here. So you can like pop your hot water bottle in there and it'll envelope over. So that part was not difficult because it's just mattress stitch, but because you're like folding it up in this direction, it was just kind of weird to do. But once I got going, it was totally fine. Needs a good wash and a block because it's very rumpled looking, that color work especially. But I'm gonna get this washed so I can pop my hot water bottle in here tonight, because there's something so nice about having that around my feet when I'm laying there reading in bed. Ah, it's just lovely. And even my husband, I left it on his side of the bed for a little bit and then moved it over, and he climbed into bed and his feet are down there. He's like, oh, it's just really warm down here. Like it just warms up the bed very nicely. So yeah, I am turning into an old lady. Next it's going to be knitted bed jackets, I guess. Which, yes, I actually keep a shawl by the bed, and if I get chilly, like if I'm sitting up reading, then I wrap my shawl around my neck and my shoulders. So yeah, I'm turning into an old lady. So I have made some progress on my Twilight Realm scarf. I think it's getting a little bit longer. I'm still on the first chart. There's 5 charts altogether, and it takes me a long time to finish one row of the chart because you're knitting this way and then you have to turn and do the same row on the other side, and it takes a while. But it is slowly getting there, and hopefully I will get the first chart. I'm more than halfway through the first chart, so I should make a goal to finish that by the end of March, maybe get that first chart done, because at the rate I'm going, I'm not going to be done by Christmas, because it's a lot of knitting, but it's coming out nicely. I really like it. Thank you for your advice about my edge stitches. Some people had some good advice about that. I haven't done any knitting since reading the advice, so I need to go back and see what was said so I can try to apply it. But I'm already this far in. I don't want to make too many changes because I don't want it to be obvious that I made changes. And it's just this one edge stitch that I'm not loving because it's just a little bit larger than everything else, but I'm hoping when I wash it, it will be okay. But it is coming along quite nicely. So this is a Twilight Realm scarf by Genevieve Legier, and it uses double knitting. So pattern on both sides using double knitting technique. And I hadn't done anything double knitting wise except for like the swatch for the Master Hand Knitting program. So it was really nice to do that. Now the yarn is Knit Picks Comfy Fingering in Clarity and Platinum, which is a blend of Pima cotton and acrylic. It's for my daughter. She likes stuff that's easy to care for, so I try to choose yarns that are not going to cause her, you know, I've got to wash this by hand. No, she's not going to do that. So I try to make sure I choose something that she can just put in the washing machine. But coming along, but I really do need to make a plan to make some really good progress with this, I think. Next is another shawl, The Festival of Stitches by Lisa Haynes. So this one I chose because of the construction. It starts out as a triangle shawl, but then you stop and you don't work in a triangle anymore. Actually have that very bottom stitch is just on a little stitch holder because you end up working in one direction instead. You like put the other half on hold and you start working, like you still continue increasing on this edge, but then you're decreasing on the other. So it's a bias rectangle now on this side. And this pink right here is where I started doing that part. So it's lace and then some mosaic knitting right here. And then this is on hold again. And I'm working on the other side doing the same thing. So came back over on this side while those stitches are on hold and these are not on hold, and I'm working on that lace and mosaic on that side. So it's going to be a rectangle shawl when it's done. But I just liked the construction of it, like starting with the triangle and then working out in both directions. I thought that was really neat. And there's enough going on with the stitch patterns that it just feels like, okay, let's just do this section. Oh, we've got a new section coming up. So you just want to like sort of keep knitting because there's something new. So I'm really liking this one. And the yarn is the navy and the pink. Let me see my notes here. That is Knit Picks Stroll yarn in Vibrant of Violet and Sapphire Heather. And then the white is a Capretta yarn, which is a superwash cashmere nylon yarn from Knit Picks as well, in Bear. I've got a whole bunch of it back there behind me. I got some for Christmas because I want to dye some yarn for my own shawls, and they accidentally sent me too much. So I grabbed a skein of that to use as my contrast color in here. I wanted something bright and colorful, and very pleased with how this is coming out. So I love the colors I chose, and the pattern is so well written. It was written for a mystery knit along, or a knit along. I don't know if it was a mystery or not. Yes, I think it was, because you had different clues. So it's still sort of formatted that way, but it's just so nicely written. You've got written instructions for everything. You've got charts for everything. Very clear ways to, like, she has advice on if you want to make it larger or smaller, or you use whatever yardage you have, how to weigh and measure to make sure you're still on track and you're not going to run out. Just lots of good information. And I had not knit one of her patterns before, and I wanted to because she's got so many great shawl patterns especially. So I was really pleased with this one, and I will probably add some more of her designs to my to knit list. Knitting a cardigan for myself. It's a lot of myself knitting, which is totally fine. I'm happy with that. It's projects I want to knit. Oh, I really like the color of this yarn. It is very glossy. This is Knit Picks Gloss, which is, let me check my notes again, a blend of 70% merino and 30% silk. Gloss DK. This yarn, this color is called Everglade, and it really is it's making it really more shiny than it is in person in that light, but that silk does give it like a really nice sheen. So this pattern is from Kate Davies, and I just liked the look of it, like the style of the cardigan. Like it looks a little bit different, you know, not just a standard construction. So it starts at the bottom. Got a whole bunch on here, all done. So it starts with just a little bit of twisted rib right down there. And then the back and part of the fronts is just stockinette stitch. And then there's a lace panel along each front. And then you're slipping the stitches so you get like an I-cord slipped edge there on the front. So it's knit from the bottom up. And I haven't read everything, but you work to your underarm. There is some increasing there to get sort of like a dolman sleeve shape. And then something happens, I haven't read it all, but like the lace section or part of it or something is sort of put on hold. Like you finish, you get your shoulder shaping, then you have to do one side and then the other for the front and the back. But then the front you do up to the shoulder, but then you stop, and then part of it is put on hold because you're going to keep knitting and joining it in the back. I haven't read it all. I just like the way the design looked, and it's just a little bit different. So I wanted to knit something that was a little bit different, and I wanted a new like springtime cardigan. And I like the weight of this. Like it's I think it will be warm, but it has like this lovely nice drape to it. It's hard to tell here because it's all bunched up on my needles, but it does just have a really nice drape to the yarn itself and the fabric that is created with it. I think the original yarn is probably one of her yarns, but someday I'd like to order some of her yarn and give it a try. But so far the pattern is really pretty simple. It's just some lace on the front. The rest is stockinette, so not a ton going on, but I'm making good progress. I've just got to keep knitting like the length of the body, which I think I'm going to go for not sort of like cropped, but you know, maybe like just hitting my hips. We'll see. I haven't quite decided on the length yet, and I've got a ton of yarn, so I'm not concerned about that part, but it's coming along nicely. The color is really just lovely. It's really gorgeous green color. Maybe it'll be just nice for like a Christmas sweater. It's just really pretty green. I don't think I own, no, I own mostly blues. Yeah, some leaning into the greens, I guess. Yeah, it's my color. I like this color. So I have another sweater in the works that I just cast on yesterday. Started with a provisional cast on, and I like to do my provisional cast on when I can onto a spare needle cord, so it's all ready to go and I don't have to try to pick up stitches. Especially I'm using 2 yarns held together, and I didn't want to try to pick up those stitches. So that's on a spare cord, and so that's the neckline, I guess, technically. And I just finished this much basically yesterday. It's going fast because I'm using like a size 10 needle, so it's just coming right along real quickly. And now it's time to stop and do the lace portion of the yoke. So this is the Love Note sweater by Tin Can Knits. I'm getting a head start on this. This is for my next run through the workshop on modifying top-down sweaters. So I wanted to demonstrate how I would modify a top-down yoke because it's a little bit different than a top-down raglan. They're kind of kissing cousins, I would say, because raglan is sort of a subset. Like they're all just a certain way to increase on the yoke and still get like that circular sweater shape. It's just where the increases are placed. Obviously in a raglan you've got the lines that are those diagonal lines for your raglan shaping, and there's different ways to get circular yoke shaping, but in the modifications, especially through the top part of the sweater, there are different ones that you can do for a raglan than you can do for a circular yoke, and then just different ways to decide the size to knit, because you can, like with a raglan, you can choose your upper bust and make some modifications for the bust. That's a little more difficult to do with the circular yoke since you're trying to do all your increases at once and it has to fit that part of your body. So we're going to go over all that in the course anyway. So I'm getting a head start on my sweater so I can like record some demos and show how I choose my size. And well, actually I have 2 sizes. I chose one as my base size. My stitch gauge was actually almost perfectly on target, so that made it a lot easier than trying to work it out with my own gauge. My row gauge is 2 rows different, so in 4 inches, so I do have to make an account for that in there. But so I chose one size for the body, and the sleeve circumference is too tight. So, because I have fleshy upper arms, so I went up one size, I think, for the arms specifically. But so that's my first modification already. And I'm going to leave the neckline like this for now. It looks really big, but my plan is to do short rows and then finish the neck edging afterwards. But it's coming along really quickly because it's on US 10s and it's just moving right along. So I've gotten this first part of the yoke done. Now it's time to do the lace and finish the yoke before I start teaching how to do all that stuff. All the modifications. I'm not making a ton for this one. I'm going to go with like the cropped length. Might do that high-low hem in the back. The sleeves, yes, I'm going to probably do a short sleeve. I want this to wear like for transition weather, like around Easter. I've got like a few cute springy, summery dresses, so I can pop on a little sweater over the top when it's still too chilly, you know, to just wear the summer dress. So yeah, cropped length to go with the dresses. So the sleeve, I might do like an elbow length puffed sleeve. And then I'll be adding short rows. I don't know if the pattern calls for short rows for the neck shaping, but I'm going to add those, demonstrate how to do that when you want to do it afterwards, going from bottom up, technically, since I'm not adding them till later. I think that might be it for modifications. Oh, and the bust shaping, because I mean, I chose a size for my full bust, but I like to like adjust the stitch counts so I can take some of the stitches from the back and move them to the front. So I'll be working that out as well. I think that's it for modifications, but I'm very pleased with this. Oh, and the yarn is Knit Picks yarn, of course, since I usually buy a whole bunch, or I ask for a whole bunch at Christmas, and that usually lasts me all year. So 2 yarns from Knit Picks. Let me check my notes. The fuzzy one is a loft, I think, it's in blush. That is a lace weight mohair. And then this is Hawthorn fingering in a speckled color. It's not really showing up very well right there, in cobbler speckle. It's got like a little bit of like hot pink and a little bit of navy blue and some purple, just little speckles in there. I picked this one because a couple of the dresses I figured I would wear it with. One is like sort of a hot pink, and then the other one is like a navy blue with some white floral print in it. So I figured this combination would work with both of those dresses. And when they're held together, it sort of looks like speckly cotton candy. It makes it more pink, like the Aloft yarn, because this is a white base, the speckled yarn. But it gives it sort of like a cotton candy look. And it's very soft. I haven't done a pattern holding the whole, you know, everybody loves doing it now, the holding 2 yarns together and the fuzzy yarn. I'm not usually a fan of like fuzzy yarns, but I figured I wanted to try it once, especially if I've got to demonstrate stuff for a class anyway. And this one, I like this one. It's not too, I've had some that are scratchy and I wasn't a fan of the fuzziness, but this one I kind of like. And it's not going to be totally next to my skin. I'll be wearing it over a couple dresses. So I think I like it. This is my first fuzzy sweater, my first one knitting one where I'm holding like the 2 strands together like this. I guess I'm finally getting on that trend. Now that it's probably going on the way out, I imagine people are getting sick of knitting with holding 2 yarns together, but I'm just doing it now. I'm not much for trends. I'm doing it because I want to. But anyway, that is zipping right along. I just cast on yesterday and I already have like the first part of the yoke done, and now it's time to just start on the lace part and then finish up the yoke. And I might have this done by the next time we have a podcast. We shall see, because it's going to be a cropped length, pretty short sleeves, and on a US 10 needle that should probably pop off the needles pretty fast. That's it for the knitting, but I do have some crochet progress on my blanket. I'm knitting the Lily Pond blanket by Janie Crow. And the next piece, I think this is piece number 4. It was originally done as a knit along, I believe. So it's still, the pattern is sort of formatted that way. You finish this one, then this one, and this one, and then after the first few, you start joining pieces together. And I don't think I have any of that. No, that's all packed away in a box where I started joining the pieces. But this is the next piece, and I think this one might be my favorite so far. I just really like the texture. Like, it just looks like it's popping right off there, all of those layers from that flower. So I've got one more left to finish, and I still have to weave in the ends on this outer bit right here. It is a lot of ends to weave in, and I usually do it in sections. Like I would finish this part first, weave in all those ends, do the next couple of rounds, weave in all those ends. So, and that keeps it from being too much finishing all at once. So I think I've got 3, I've got 1 left I have to get the border on. And then that piece will be done. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna start joining those pieces together, like seaming them up pretty soon too as well. So that's moving right along. I think this is like the halfway point for this pattern. This was number 4. So I wanted to say there's 8 motifs altogether. I'm not sure, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I feel like I'm about at the halfway point when it comes to working the pieces. So this one's moving along quite quickly. I did, which one did I do last year? The fruit garden. And that one took me a good 6 months. But that was also my first big crochet project. Before that, I'd only done like a couple of squares of just like simple crochet. So this is sort of my second project with crochet, and I'm really pleased with how things are turning out. Now the yarn, I didn't use the recommended yarn, but I tried to find like as close color-wise as I could. So I'm using Knit Picks Brava Sport, which is a sport weight yarn, 100% acrylic, because I wanted something it's easy to care for. It's probably going to get tossed over the chair and right here, sort of just like color in the background. So yeah, you can see some of the colors there. Like it's just like lots of pinks and greens and lily pond, just those bright, bold colors. So I tried to pick colors that were pretty close to the originals because I liked the colors in the original blanket. So that's it for all of the knitting that's on my needles. So of course, and my hooks, but before we wrap up, we have to do our monthly giveaway. And this is a really nice giveaway this month. 200-gram skeins of yarn from Alley Cat Yarns. This is our Silk Yak Fingering. It's a blend of 60% Superwash Merino, 20% silk, 20% yak in this, I don't know what the colorway is called, but it's this lovely sort of grayish purple tone. Looks really pretty with this purple here. But so 2 skeins, so 200 grams altogether, some stitch markers from Alley Cat Yarns as well, and of course a little nerdy knitting pin, which you can see the little logo right there. Same little logo on here. You can pop that on your favorite knitting bag. So this lovely yak and silk and superwash yarn, it's really nice. It's got like this little shine from the silk, a little bit of fuzziness from the yak, I'm thinking. But I've used the DK version and it's a really nice yarn. It has lovely drape and shine, really, really nice. So that is this month's giveaway. So to enter the giveaway, leave a comment telling me if you've used any sort of luxury or specialty fibers like yak. Or if you haven't, you can say you haven't and maybe tell me about one that you would like to knit with someday. Like I would like to knit with Kiviot and Vicuña, and they're harder to find and they're much more expensive, so I haven't knit with them yet. But those are on like my someday knit with these fibers list. So just leave a comment telling me about the fibers you have knit with, those luxury or different fibers, or if you haven't, say that you haven't and just leave it at that, or tell me if there's some that you would like to knit with someday, sort of dream fibers that you'd like to try out. And next Wednesday, February 29th, leap year this year, I will choose I'll use a random comment generator to choose a comment, and I'll leave a comment under your comment telling you to get in touch with me, leaving my email address, and you need to send me your full name and mailing address so I can get your package out in the mail to you. And if you don't get back to me within about 2 days, then I'll have to choose somebody else. And I've had to do that multiple times. So make sure your notifications are turned on, that you know that you're getting a response to your comment. So you'll know that that comment was left there, so you know that you won. So anyway, fine print. If the winner's location is like just so expensive to ship a package to, then I am going to send you a gift card from Wool Warehouse instead, just because it would be cheaper. So far it hasn't been, but if shipping is insane for some reason, then we will go the route of sending a gift card electronically from Wool Warehouse, and they ship all over the place. And other disclaimer, we have not run into this issue yet, but I wanted to mention it because I'm in Canada, and if you're in a different country, there could be customs and duties. I list it as a gift, and it's usually like less than $100. I mean, it's always less than $100, so I don't think it would get flagged for customs and duties taxes. But if it ever does, I'm not going to be responsible for those. I'm responsible for the giveaway and for the shipping it to you. But if it shows up at your door and you have to pay customs and duties, then you can reject the package if you don't want to pay for that, and it'll just get sent back to me. But I can't be responsible for that as well. So caveat there, I don't think it's an issue, but I do want to add that disclaimer. And final disclaimer, YouTube is not responsible for this giveaway in any way. It's not sponsored by them. It's just sponsored by me. This is yarn that I got from Alley Cat Yarns. Pretty sure, let me see. Oh yes, she sent this to me. I ordered some and she gave me some extras, so this is what I'm giving away to you. So thank you to her generosity, Melissa at Alley Cat Yarns. She is here in Canada. I love finding Canadian hand-dyed yarns that I like her yarns because they're different. Like this one has like that yak and silk in it, and she's got other ones as well. So you'll have to check out Alley Cat Yarns. She's got some fabulous yarns. So leave a comment if you want to enter that giveaway. I'll be closing it next week and choosing a comment as a winner and getting in touch with you so I can get your package in the mail. And that wraps up another podcast episode for the end of another month in 2024. So I will leave a video here. If you've been hanging around for a while and you've probably seen the podcast episodes, then I'm going to let YouTube recommend a video that you might not have seen. And if you're new here, I'll put the playlist for this season's podcast episodes and you can catch up and see what other projects I've been working on. So I'll see you in the next video.